Now the story of the canceled Too Soon TV show, and the one man who chose to keep the series going through a revival that slowly imploded from family drama. It was Arrested Development's shit show. So began the Great Dark Period. In the absence of Arrested Development, the 9 main cast members' careers took off, turning each of them into comedy all-stars.
Karate!
F&A, Cotton, F&A!
Yeah, okay. Groves.
You got mail.
Dude, this thing claims I have mail.
Karate!
Dude, now I'm reading it.
Do you want ants? Because that's how you get ants. Well
I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I don't know what to say, so I'm just whispering instead.
Oh.
Karate!
Come on, I am no stranger to scandal.
What scandal have you been involved with?
Well, there was that little incident on Arrested Development. You haven't heard about it. There's no reason to hear about it.
I have to
now.
go.
That can't be good.
For creator Mitch Hurwitz, it wasn't as successful. 2 canceled series and 9 failed pilots later, the urge to revive Arrested was understandable. The double-edged sword of destiny for his series were the fans who waited for the show to come to DVD. Since they didn't watch them live, the ratings were poor. On the other hand, with the DVDs, they could watch episodes back-to-back to appreciate the complexity, then let friends borrow the sets, especially around college campuses. Years after leaving the air, Arrested continually had millions of new fans hopping on. It was unheard of in the business. Fans would rather pay money to watch a series than view it for free on TV? And that's how the clamoring for more Arrested Development only grew. Making a movie became the goal for Hurwitz, and possibly a trilogy. But he and producer Ron Howard struggled with getting a studio interested in funding an extension of an underseen TV series.
Keep from crying, even though your heart is
Finding time to shoot anything with the cast seemed impossible too, but they all wanted to return. As a joke, when asked about what was taking so long, Hurwitz alluded to Michael Cera being the only actor unwilling to come back. The internet freaked out and Cera went full Andy Kaufman, giving interviews confirming his hesitancy. Again, it was all just a prank, and in reality, Cera actually wanted to help Hurwitz write any follow-up. The level of press this stunt caused was proof that Arrested's fandom had grown exponentially, and the desire for more of the Bluth family was not a fallacy. Hurwitz took that energy to write beyond just a movie.
I gotta tell you, I think movies are dead. Maybe it's a TV show.
In October of 2011, the stars began to align.
We're 80% of the way to an answer. I have been working on the screenplay. Where everyone's been for 5 years became a big part of the story. So in working on the screenplay, I found even if I just gave 5 minutes per character to that backstory, we were halfway through the movie before the characters got together. And that kind of gave birth to this a limited run series into the movie.
Wanting to capitalize on the rise of web-only content, Hurwitz saw a way he could leverage the format to tell smaller webisodes that would lead into a film and make it easier to shoot with his now very busy cast. This opportunity arose in Netflix chief Ted Sarandos. Netflix was ushering TV into its next revolution, moving from mailed DVDs to the new-fangled idea of streaming. Not content with housing other studios' movies and series, Netflix made a huge push for their own original programming. Though they will never share the numbers, Sarandos would know how many people watched and rewatched Arrested on their platform. As a huge fan, he was the one who suggested to Ron Howard that Arrested come over to Netflix. Hurwitz always saw his series as a trailblazer. After all, the original 3 seasons reinvented the network sitcom. If he was going to return to the banana stand, he didn't want to fall back into that mold. He wanted to break it. In his brain, he foresaw a season of serialized television that could be viewed in any order. Each episode would be its own arc, but provide pieces to the grander whole.
You know what? I am done with this family. I hope you've saved some money because you're going to need every dime now. What's this?
But the party wouldn't last long.
You know what? I am done with this family. I hope you've saved some money because you're going to need every dime now. What's this? Return it or rip it up.
If he could pull off this Rashomon-style storytelling, it would be unlike any series before it. Hurwitz pitched 9 episodes, roughly 10 to 15 minutes each, about individual Bluths. In November, after a bidding war with Showtime and Hulu, Netflix sealed the deal and dove headfirst into reviving the fan favorite Arrested Development.
We're here! We're doing it! We're doing it! F***ing right? Pants off, right? Not pants off, not pants off. Pants on.
Shooting began in April of 2012, and it was confusing. First, scheduling all the actors was a nightmare. The full cast was only able to shoot 2 scenes together. The rest was entirely predicated on who was free to come to set on any given day. When Tony Hale was the sole actor available, they shot an unplanned montage of him by himself. So the shooting order was all over the map. This meant they needed one director throughout. Instead of their previous top-tier talent like the Russo brothers, Greg Mottola, Jay Chandrasekhar, Paul Feig, or even Jason Bateman, Hurwitz needed a workhorse. He chose his friend Troy Miller, director of classics like Jack Frost and Dumb and Dumberer. Little did Hurwitz know that Miller was someone David Cross once called an ego-driven, unfunny person. Cross disowned their film Run, Ronnie, Run after Miller shut him out of the editing room. The two called a truce on Arrested. After all, like the original seasons, collaboration was encouraged and essential. However, the plot was so labyrinthine and crucial that any deviation would contradict what was already in the can. One offhanded joke or stray movement could derail a scene or the whole storyline. And a lot of the time, the writers were so behind, fixing issues because of cast availability, they didn't have pages yet, leaving the actors in need of Hurwitz's direct instructions. This lack of readiness ran counter to Hurwitz's whole philosophy.
Chance favors the well-prepared.
Chance favors the well-prepared.
When he sat down to edit, his reach had exceeded his grasp. His brazen concept for changing what a season of television could be fell apart. How do you assemble an emotional or climactic beginning, middle, and end if it's out of order and the pieces are spread about different episodes? And Netflix wouldn't have an option to randomize them anyway. It became an unsolvable problem, and Hurwitz had to abandon his primary objective for making season 4. That said, Hurwitz did like that he could savor every joke. Without the constraints of commercial breaks or time limits, his 9 10-minute shorts idea ballooned into 15 over 30-minute episodes, which became a headache for Netflix. Now that the actors had no idea what they actually contributed to each episode, Netflix had to pay them on a sliding scale based on whether they were the central character or if they appeared for more or less than 90 seconds. In the end, Hurwitz was insanely proud of what he had accomplished. To this day, he knows it's not the most digestible form of television, but he calls it the best thing he's ever done. An awesome mind puzzle that played with the very idea of how people perceive storytelling. On May 26, 2013, 7 years after its cancellation, Netflix released all 15 episodes of Arrested Development Season 4. To help measure fans' enormous expectations, in the press, Hurwitz and the cast were quick to classify the new season as a fun experiment and not necessarily the same series. It was a new start. It didn't really help. The general opinion of Season 4 was a mixed bag. The performances were just as strong, the comedy was often hilarious,
Daddy needs to get his rocks off.
and that Rube Goldberg creativity still rivaled any series on TV. For many devotees, though, it wasn't the
Same.
What was 22-minute episodes of jam-packed efficiency had turned into 30-plus minutes of directionless bloat. The myriad of supremely complicated plot lines overshadowed jokes. The fast and loose camera work of old was literally anchored down for bad green screen cameos. And the mean-spirited turn for Jason Bateman's Michael Bluth, usually the heart of the series, left viewers feeling cold. It was far from perfecto. Because of Netflix's cagey bookkeeping, the general public has no clue how well Season 4 did. But despite its lukewarm response and Hurwitz's failed ambitions, Arrested was once again a model of influence. Outside of the frequent anomalies of Futurama and Family Guy, revivals weren't common. And now? David Lynch traveled back to Twin Peaks, Saved by the Bell held another session, and both Roseanne and Dexter returned to retcon their final seasons. We got more Animaniacs, Full House, Gilmore Girls, Samurai Jack, and in a way, Karate Kid. Arrested Development proved that beloved series could be resurrected in unexpected ways, and decades later. As an obsessive editor, Mitch Hurwitz picked up season 4 again and wanted to see if he could make it chronological. He figured if Netflix put the season into syndication, too much would be lost. Better he handle it himself. But in the process, started seeing the flaws.
I'm telling a whole different story. But as a result, I'm looking at all the scenes again, and I'm seeing some real big mistakes. Just things like, this scene is about Buster feeling inadequate, and we never cut back to Buster.
Nevertheless, he typed out each scene and its length in seconds into a spreadsheet, printed it out, cut it into squares, then rearranged them until he hit roughly 22 minutes, the same length as the seasons on Fox. After the narrative was settled, he had Ron Howard voice new narration to make it work. He finished his experiment in 2016, ending with 22 episodes. But Netflix didn't know what to do with it. This remix could be seen as Hurwitz and Netflix's partial admittance of the revival's problems, chief among them, its overloaded length. And Netflix has never been in the business of admitting guilt.
Should the guy?
They put the episodes in the attic. Season 4 was always meant to be a jumping off point into a movie. Hurwitz viewed it as an Act 1 of a film that would be Act 2 and 3. Fox Searchlight entered talks to produce the endlessly teased movie, but backed out for unknown reasons. So Hurwitz returned to Netflix, deciding to expand his Act 2 ideas into another full season. One of their main goals was to finish the subplot of George Bluth building a wall between the US and Mexico. Then life started imitating the art. A morally bankrupt, narcissistic real estate family conning their way into politics to construct a border wall was already playing out on the nightly news.
I will build a great, great wall on our southern border.
Which was my idea!
The writers feared audiences would accuse them of taking the easy route of parroting real life, so they ditched the subplot almost entirely, choosing instead to focus mostly on the murder mystery. Hurwitz did take some of Season 4's critiques to heart. He retconned Michael Bluth's selfish arc of choosing a new girlfriend over his own son, and ignored a handful of other cliffhangers. He also realized he went too far with the Bluth's cosmic coincidences by expecting audiences to reconstruct every interaction in their head, yet never explicitly giving them a laugh-out-loud payoff. This time it would be more straightforward, but not returning to the self-contained episodes like the original run. Instead, the plot would be laid out like a serialized drama. Correcting the single biggest criticism of Season 4 would be having the cast all together. Though they tried as much as possible, finding time for all the actors was still a constantly moving obstacle that forced what scenes the team could actually write. From Jason Bateman's shortening availability to Portia de Rossi retiring from acting. Hurwitz felt ambitious with Season 5, again thinking he could innovate television. Among his many ideas, he wanted the Bluths to put on a talent show fundraiser that would be performed live for Netflix. It would go off the rails with the actors rage quitting, making the audience wonder what was real and what was scripted. Yet much to his heartbreaking regret, Hurwitz wasn't prepared by the time cameras were rolling in the summer of 2017. Frequently behind the 8 ball, he spent most of his time in the writer's room playing catch-up and was rarely on set. His grand plans were once again abandoned, requiring endless script changes that would be given to the actors the day of.
It got so confusing that I never knew that a prop person came out to me once and just put a foot on my arm and was like, all right, here you go. And I said, so what does this mean? And the props person goes, I don't know, just go with it.
Days were wasted on material that would be reshot weeks later to undo their own mistakes. They were only halfway through the shoot, and it had already gotten out of control. The cast grew angry.
We're getting new pages. You're getting, it was not cool. For an actor, it was a difficult time because, we'd get a script, they weren't done. You'd get something at night, it'd be, pages and pages of stuff, and then it would change later on that night, and then you get in the morning, and it'd be, you'd have 2.5 new pages of long stuff.
Sure.
And that's hard for anybody.
Yeah.
But it's also harder when you're older.
Then an outside controversy pushed things to the edge. The Me Too movement was unraveling, and multiple accounts against Jeffrey Tambor came to light. Key among them were during his then current role on Transparent. The award-winning series was known for its socially progressive look into the transgender community, and now its star was being investigated for sexual harassment against trans women. With Arrested Season 5 on the horizon, the story devoured both series. Tambor left Transparent before Amazon Studios outright fired him, and Netflix had to determine if he should remain on Arrested. Hurwitz defended Tambor, as Amazon never shared the allegations, and he chose to side with his friend who denied them. Then Tambor brought that tension to the Arrested set. During one scene, he viciously lashed out at Jessica Walter, trying to remember her last-minute rewrites.
This wasn't a group of strangers. We have known each other and worked together for 15 years. And occasionally, in that kind of family, you have a outburst. And also, what Jeffrey did wasn't cool. I mean, having an outburst is okay, but what it was, it went beyond that. That wasn't cool.
Tambor and Walter had it out and moved on. Nonetheless, Hurwitz was called out by the whole cast for the conditions he had put them in. They held a semi-intervention. I just wasn't on stage with them the way I usually am. They were getting script changes without context, scenes that they didn't have time to prep for. It was hard for them. I was putting my process ahead of theirs, selfishly, and feeling like that I had the right to because I'm under the gun and trying so hard. And they were saying, no, we want to help. We want to try hard. After some extremely late reshoots in February of 2018, filming wrapped for Season 5. Beaten but not downed, Hurwitz had ideas on how Arrested would carry on. In May of 2018, Netflix was set for a full media blitz, and each turn proved more difficult than the last. In hopes of bringing back jaded fans, Netflix released Hurwitz recut episodes as Season 4 Remix, Fateful Consequences. Now the official way of watching it. With the episode count increasing from 15 to 22, the entire cast demanded pay bumps, especially if these would actually go to syndication, and Netflix refused.
Hey, Jocelyn, would you mind bringing down the standard TV contracts, please?
Streaming contracts, cable, or broadcast?
We got a streamer here.
No residuals.
Chauncey will have those down in just a minute.
The game of chicken ended when the Screen Actors Guild threatened to sue. Netflix settled out of court. And while the Chronological remix was an interesting experiment, it rendered the season's reveals pointless, contained an excruciating degree of exposition from the narrator, and did very little to bolster anticipation for Season 5.
No, I thought that would be up your alley.
Then the cast had to awkwardly navigate press events, when reporters only wanted to ask about the accusations against Tambor.
Not only do I support him as a friend, but I've known him for 20 years. I've worked with him for 20 years, and I've never seen any behavior like that described. It's just not who he is.
I'm very close to Jeffrey, and I care about him a lot. I support him being on the show, but I also support the voices of the victims at the same time.
Family is the family. You can't cut anybody out, nor would we ever want to. It is what it is.
Sensing a storm brewing, Netflix abruptly announced that Season 5 would be split in half, 2 weeks before debuting, with no date for Part 2 and no reason given. Furthering the blowback, Tambor admitted to The Hollywood Reporter about his anger problem and alluded to his past eruption towards Jessica Walter. When the cast sat with the New York Times, Walter was expressly asked about this, and things turned into an ugly therapy session. Before she had a moment to speak, her male co-stars quickly fell over themselves defending Tambor, instead of hearing out Walter's own feelings. When the audio leaked, the story exploded.
And it is a breeding ground for atypical behavior, and certain people have certain processes.
That doesn't mean it's acceptable. And the point is that things are changing and people need to respect each other differently.
I just realized in this conversation, I have to let go of being angry at him. He never crossed the line on our show with any, sexual whatever. Verbally, yes, he harassed me, but he did apologize. I have to let it go, and I have to give you a chance for us to be friends again.
Absolutely.
But it's hard because honestly, Jason says this happens all the time. In like almost 60 years of working, I've never had anybody yell at me like that on a set, and it's hard to deal with it. But I'm over it now. I just let it go right here for the New York Times.
Completely eclipsing season 5's release, it was all anyone could talk about. From the toxic nature of the male-dominated industry to the simple notion of just listening. Hurwitz, who saw the outburst during editing, felt he had initially misinterpreted the issue and was saddened to discover how hurt Walter was. Thanks to Alia Shawkat explaining to her on-screen family why they were in the wrong, the apologies soon followed.
We all love each other. We don't wish anything but the best for everybody. There's no enemies there.
2 days before the premiere, Netflix canceled all future promotional events. Arrested Development Season 5 debuted on Netflix May 29, 2018. 5 years after Season 4's release, 15 since its debut, the blues felt longer in the tooth than ever before. Having the cast all together was a win, and there are jokes only Arrested knows how to pull off. But again, that unrestrained time limit led to a pace akin to drying concrete. Unable to pick a lane, the majority of the runtime is overrun by plot exposition. Many of its flaws could have been forgiven had the episodes been funnier. However, the jokes come far less often, and it starts feeling more like the sitcoms it once evolved from.
Total regression!
And watching Tambor and Walter fight on screen didn't help. Then it was quiet. Nearly a full 10 months went by without a word. And just as Netflix countered Fox by reviving Arrested, they too showed they could dump Arrested, just like Fox. By 2019, peak television was ever increasing, and Netflix had grown into a monster of the industry, one that cannibalized its own content by releasing too much, too often. So like most of its original series, Arrested Development Season 5 Part 2 was unceremoniously dropped on March 15th, 2019, with virtually no promotion from the cast or Netflix. It was hard to know whether the season was split in half to justify keeping a subscription, or to double down its chances at the Emmys, or maybe it was to fix Season 5 into a finale. It's anyone's guess what happened in those 10 months. But with Jeffrey Tambor persona non grata, Portia de Rossi retired, and Alia Shawkat saying she wouldn't return, the likely scenario is that Hurwitz saw the foundation crumbling and retrofitted the last 8 episodes into a series finale. It might explain the preposterous amount of 80-yard scenes, like entire scenes worth.
Look at that, how'd that get there? Actually, I thought I'd find my maritime law diploma, as proof that I passed what they call the wet bar.
And the rushed feeling of the climactic ending, where Jason Bateman and Michael Cera's stand-ins were used to finish their scenes. Part 2 received even worse reception than the first. It contains all the same problems as before, and during that hiatus, it became clear that Arrested would not be coming back. A shell of its former self, the last 8 episodes limped to an unfulfilling conclusion, and a rather sinister one at that.
Okay, I did it.
It would be Arrested Development's final countdown.
Will it come back again?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think it should?
Things would have to be different.
Any chance of more Arrested died with the unfortunate passing of Jessica Walter, the cold-hearted, conniving, drunken, and lovable matriarch of the Bluths.
What's this? What's happening?
It's going to be all right.
Why are you squeezing me with your body?
It's a hug, Michael. I'm hugging you.
Mitch Hurwitz was the intricate mind behind all of Arrested Development, from the innovative, hilarious good to the divisive, pretentious bad. Perhaps his hubris got the better of him, or outside drama forced unwanted changes on the revival. But no one could argue Hurwitz and his writers from the whole series didn't change television for the better. And that is the most important thing. Because of his desire to push sitcoms beyond the laugh track-filled tropes, TV was pushed into a new comedy golden age. And that can't be dismissed out of hand. Or hook. Most may not like Season 5, and while many did appreciate Season 4's boldness, they will always have the revolutionary and hysterical original 3, where they can debate endlessly about which season was actually the best.
2. No, 1.
Okay, 2 or 3?
3. Unless 3 is too much of an improvement. I'm sorry, is 1 in the mix still?
On the next, it was a shit show. The Bluths continue to predict the future.
There's a good chance I may have committed some light treason.
The documents the FBI believed were illegally in Trump's possession were sensitive material with national security implications.
Then immediately dumped.
Surrounded by paid protesters meant to depict both sides of a culture war that kind of ended a few years ago, didn't it?
157 Republicans voted against the Respect for Marriage Act.
People continue to bug us about an MCU Part 3 video, and we realize we should probably get started on that.
What you trying to say to me?